Baruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Nun Daled Amud Aleph, the second line from the top. Our Mishnah taught us that the rams would go out levuvin. That meant that they would tie a piece of leather over the organs of the ram in order to then prevent it from having excessive mating, whereby the animal should not become weakened as a result of its excessive mating. Now the Mishnah goes on to say that the rechelos, the female sheep, they would go out shechuzois. We explained that to mean that meant that they tied up the tail of the rechelos in order to then encourage mating. The Mishnah goes on to say, harecheim yoitzos kevulois. My kevulois, what is meant by kevulois? Asked the Gemara. Shemechavlin elea shalahen, aliyah shalahen, lamato, kedesh lo yalu aleim hazecharm. Here refers to actually tying down the tail of the female sheep in order to then discourage mating. My mashma dahai kovul, lishna de lo avi perihu. Where do we know the mashmos that the word kavul, which really means chains, that refers to the non-producing, non-productive type of behavior. Dirshu, it said in the pasuk, me ha'orim ha'ele asher nosatali achi v'ikor lehen eretz kavul. They call these cities eretz kavul ad hayom hazeh, till this day. My eretz kavul, the Gemara asks, Rav Huna shahayu ba b'nei adam shemechuvlin bekesef v'zahav. They were tied down with gold and silver. The Gemara wants to explain, what does that mean? How is that mashma that it's unproductive? Amar le'rava ihachi hainu dichsiv lo yishru be'enov. That which is in the pasuk, that these cities were not yashru be'enov, they were not upright in their eyes. Why not? Those that are tied with kesef, with gold and silver, it would not be considered to be upright, it would not be straight and good in a person's eyes. That's right. Kivan de asire mafanki, because they were wealthy and they were spoiled, loy avdi avidita, they didn't do work and therefore they're unproductive. So we see that the word kavul refers to lo avi peri, they were unproductive. And therefore in our Mishnah, when it says that these rechelim would be yoitzes kavulois, it refers to the unproductivity of these rechelos because their tails would be tied down, discouraging mating. Says the Gemara, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok Amar Eretz Choimtoin Haisa. It was a land of Choimtoin. Choimtoin refers to that it was very salty, maybe sandy. V'amai korile kavul. So why is it referred to as kavul? The mishtarga bakara ad kavula, because their legs would sink until their ankles. Kavul refers to kavula. That's the word that we're referring to as kavul. Va'amrei inshi ara mikavula deloy aved peri. And people would say this is a land that one sinks ankle deep, which is not productive. Again, we see that has the connotation of something that's not productive, the word kavul. And therefore, the rechelim would be yoitzes kavulois, because their tails would be tied down. My kavunois, now the Mishnah is quoted as saying kavunois, that the rechelis would also go out kavunois. The Gemara wants to know, what does it mean that the rechelim would go out kavunois? My kavunois shemechavnin oisoy lemelas, that they would machavnin them for melas. It refers to they would make it so that the wool that was for a newly born lamb would remain a pristine white. In other words, right after the lamb was birthed, so the mother would lick up its wool, and that it's the cleanest type of wool that there would be, and thereby they would cover it up with a protective covering to keep it pristine and white. Kidisnan, like it says in the Mishnah, se'es katsemer lovon, referring to negoim. It says se'es, the type of nega was like tsemer lovon. My tsemer lovon, what does it mean? Like white wool? Isn't all wool white? No. Omar Abibi bar abai kitsemer noki ben yoimoy, just like the newborn lamb, that was used to then keep it pristine so that it could be then a most whitened type of wool. The Mishnah has said that the izim, the goats, they go out tzrurois with a covering underneath its udders. Itmar. We have a statement, Rav Amar halacha k'Rabbi Yehuda. Ushmuel Omar halacha k'Rabbi Yosi. There's a machlokes in our Mishnah between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that indeed the izim could go out tzroros if it's liyabesh, in order to then dry up the udders, but not just to catch the drippings of the milk. Whereas Rabbi Yosi says that it cannot go out at all with this pouch in order to then cover its udders. There are those who taught this teaching, this halacha, on its own without going to the Mishnah. Rav Amar liyabesh umuter v'lo lechalev. Rav says in order to then dry up its udders, that would be permissible, but not to then catch the milk drippings. Ushmuel Amar echad ze v'echad ze oser. Whereas Shmuel says that they are both also, even it's going to then dry out, because again, Shmuel is of the opinion, like Rabbi Yossi holds, that this is not for the benefit of the animal, it's not for then to save or to protect the animal for its own health, and it's also not a tachshit, and therefore it's prohibited. And there are those who teach it on the following: the goats, they may go out with tzros, with this covering, the pouch over its udders, to then dry up the udders, but not to catch the milk drippings. Mishum Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omru kach halacha. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says that indeed is the halacha if it's only to miyabesh and not to catch the chalav. Avami maifis eze liyabesh ve'eze lechalav. Who can draw lots, meaning who can ascertain whether this pouch is really in order to then dry up the udders or just merely to catch the milk? And since Rabbi Yehuda ben Seira says it's not clearly discernible, therefore they'll both be osir. Omar Shmuel v'amrei lo Omar Rabbi Yehuda Omar Shmuel halacha Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Indeed, the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Ki osir Ravin Omar Rabbi Yochanan halacha kitana kama. No, Ravin argues and he says, indeed, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, the halacha is like the Tanakama of our Mishnah, and says whether it's going to be liyabesh or lechalev, one can put the pouch over the udders of the goats and allow them to go out on Shabbos. The Gemara now brings a new Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, uvame eina yoytze. Until now we're talking about various things that an animal can go out with on Shabbos, and it's not a problem of shvisas behemta, but now the Mishnah lists various things that an animal cannot go out with. Again, the principle is that if it's for a tachshit, for the beautification of the animal, which is a typical type of beautification, or if it's for the protection of the animal or the controlling of the animal by its owner, then it may go out. It's not considered to be a load. Says the Gemara Mishnah, Lo yotza gamal b'mitolteles. A gamal cannot go out with a mitolteles. A mitolteles for a gamal is similar to that mardeya that we said in a chamor, a blanket. It cannot go out with the blanket that is put on top of it. Lo akud v'lo rogul. And it can't go out with its legs and hands tied up. The Gemara will explain the various type of tyings we're talking about. V'chein shar kol ha-behemos. Not only is it talking about a gamal, but also other behemos. Lo yikshar gemolim ze bazeh v'moshech. One cannot tie together camels like in a single file line and pull the front and then lead the gemalim. Aval machnis chavolim letoich yodoi v'yimshoich ubevashel yichroich. But he could enter his hand into the chavolim, to the ropes, if they're not going to be tied to each other, and he can pull. So that is not, so long as it's not going to be wrapped around. The Gemara will explain all of this. What is the kavana over here? Why you cannot go and kosher gemalim, and why you can put your hand into the chavolim so long as not yichroich. The Gemara will explain all of this. Be'ezer Hashem. Says the Gemara Tana, lo yotze hagamal b'matol teles hakshur loy biznavoi. One cannot go out and allow a gamal, a camel, to go out with its blanket that is tied to its tail. Aval yoitzehu b'mitulteles hakshura biznavoi uvechutrasoi. However, it can go out if it's tied not only to its tail but also to the top part of the camel, those different bumps. Then it's securely fastened, and it's not a concern that it will fall off, and the owner will then pick it up and walk Dalet Amos Rishus Harabim. However, if it's only kosher, if it's only tied to the tail, then it's likely to fall off, and the owner will carry it Dalet Amos Rishus Harabim, and therefore it's osir. Omar Rabbi bar Rav Huna yotzek gamal bebetul teles hakshura lo b'shilyosa. He says a gamal can also go out if this type of blanket mitultelis is going to be tied to its shilya, and therefore, since it will be pulling the shilya, right, which is considered to be the placenta, obviously it will hurt the animal, and it'll then be very careful that it shouldn't become detached, and then it shouldn't pull it too much. So therefore, it will remain intact on the gamal, on the camel. The Mishnah said also the animal cannot go out akud and not rogul. Says the Gemara to explain, Amar Rav Yehuda, akud akeda yad veregel ki Yitzchak ben Avraham. Akud refers to the hand and the foot that is tied, as was done to Yitzchak, the son of Avraham, by akedas Yitzchak. Rogul shelo yachuf yodai al gabe zroyoi vikshor. Rogul refers to that you can't bend down, let's say, the foreleg and tie the front to the back. So although the three legs are regular, but the fourth one is not, and therefore won't be able to then walk properly. Those cannot be done to allow a behemoth to walk out on Shabbos with. Says the Gemara the following. Meisvei akud shtei yadayim v'shtei raglayim. The Brisa says that akud means that it's two hands and two legs. That means a hand and a leg and a hand and a leg, both. Rogel shelo yachuf yaday al gabe zroa v'yikshor. Rogel, like we explained before, you cannot bend down the foreleg and tie it together to itself. Even though the other three legs will be intact, untied, that cannot be done. So we have a kasha because before we said in the name of Yehuda, it's one leg and one arm that is awkward. And here we see two legs and two arms. Answers the Gemara, Yehuda Omar Kiyai Tana. Rav Yehuda goes like the following Tana. The Tanya, like it says in the Brisa, awkward akedas yad v'regel, oishtei yadayim v'shtei raglayim. This Tana says that it's awkward yad and regel. Then it goes on to say that is awkward is two hands and two raglayim. Rogel shelo yachuf yodai agabe zroya v'ikshor. And similarly, that rogel means that you can't bend down, again, the foreleg and tie it. V'akati asked the Gemara, loidami, it's not going to be completely similar. Bishlam Reisha v'Seifa, the first part and the latter part of the Brisa is the same. That means the one leg and the one arm, so to speak, of the animal is tied, that's considered to be akud. The latter part of the Brisa says that rogil is when the foreleg is tied itself, but the middle part, mitziyasa kasha, because there it says two legs and two arms. Elohu da'amar ki hai tana. Rather, Rav Yehuda goes like the following Tana. Akud aked is yad v'regel ki Yitzchak ben Avram. Rogel shelo yachuv yada al gabe zroa v'yikshor. He goes like this Tana, who does say it's one yad and one regel that's tied together, and that's considered to be akud. The Mishnah said, "V'lo yikshor gemalim." You cannot tie camels together and lead them. My taimo, why can't you tie camels together? Zeh b'zeh v'yimshoich. Omar Rav Ashi mishum demechzi keman da'ozel lechinga, because it appears that you're bringing it to the shuk. That's how they would sell camels, and therefore that was prohibited by the Chachamim to do. Aval Machnis, however, goes on to say in the Mishnah, you could bring in your hand to the chavolim. Says the Gemara, Rav Ashi lo shonu el in kilayim. We're not talking about Hilchos Shabbos over here. Certainly, there's no prohibition of Shabbos. The entering of your hand to the chavolim would be an inyan of kilayim, of an admixture that is prohibited. Ask the Gemara, kilayim demai, what are we talking about? Eze kilayim? Ilema kilayim da odam. We're talking about the mixture of a person together with the animal that is then doing, let's say, some sort of work together. That's the kilayim that we're talking about, an admixture of two, in this case, not two animals, but an animal and a person. Just like you cannot have a donkey and a bull tied together, or a horse and a donkey tied together and pull a carriage. So too, the Gemara is suggesting, are you talking about kilayim of a person and a animal? V'hatnan, that can't be. Adam mutar im kulam lachrosh v'limshoich. A man has no prohibition of being tied together with an animal. There's no isser of kilayim. Ela kilayim de chavolim. We're talking about kilayim of the chevel, of the ropes. Wool and linen. The Hatanya asked the Gemara, the Brisa says, Hatoichef tekifa achas ein a chibur. If you just tie it once, it's not going to be considered to be a chibur for kilayim, for prohibited purposes of an admixture. Answers the Gemara, La'olam kilayim de chavolim. We are talking about kilayim of chavolim. However, v'hochi kamar, u'bilvad shelo yikroch v'yikshor. So long as it's not yikshor, meaning they're not tying it properly, whereby it's an isser of kilayim. Then you could go ahead and machnis your hand if it's not going to be yichroich. Omar Shmuel uvilvash lo yetze chevel mitachas yodoi tefach. Shmuel says, so long as that it doesn't go, the rope, the chevel doesn't go underneath your hand more than a tefach. I asked the Gemara, v'hotana the Beis Shmuel tfachayim. In the Beis Hamedrash of Shmuel, it was taught 2 tfachim. That it can't be, the rosh, the head of the chevel, cannot be dangling 2 tefachim, not 1 tefach. Omar Abaye Hashid, Omar Shmuel tefach, v'tan de Beis Shmuel tefachim. That which Shmuel said 1 tefach can be dangling the rope from your hand. Whereas it said in the Beis HaMedrash of Shmuel 2 tefachim, Shmuel halacha lemaisa asala ashmina. Shmuel was machmer to say halacha lemaisa, it shouldn't be more than 1 tefach dangling, because it will appear that indeed the person is then causing a masui. It looks as if he's going to then hold the animal and carry the animal, and therefore he's carrying it with his hand, the rope, and therefore that would be also if it's more than 1 tefach. It shouldn't be appearing that it's going to be him doing it, and not it's part of the animal. Part of the saddle. Says the Gemara v'hatanya. The Gemara asks from the Brisa, ubilvad sheyagbia min hakarka tefach. It says in the Brisa, provided that it doesn't have more than a tefach higher than the ground. Sorry, it should be at least a tefach from the ground. So here it implies that so long as it's going to be a tefach high from the ground, it could be any amount that's extending from one's hand. Says the Gemara, no, kitanya hi bechavola de beni. There's 2 parts of the chevel. Shmuel was talking about the roish, the head of the rope. That can't be more than a tefach dangling from his hand. But that which we're talking about, the part of the rope that's coming from the animal, that rope itself, as long as it's higher than 1 tefach from the ground, then it is mutter. Otherwise, it's a problem because it appears that the animal is carrying a masui.